Welcome. Today we're doing Unit 1, Activity 4. The V question is, what is the conducting path through the bulb and socket? To run this experiment today, we're going to use the same setup as we used in Activity 3, when we put some things into the loop and found out which objects were conductors and which ones are insulators. But today we're going to be using a combination of things from the sockets or the bulbs in our setup. So to run our experiment, we'll have a 3-cell battery pack and 2 bulbs in a loop, but we'll have 4 wires as part of the loop. Here we have 2 yellow wires, which will be our testing wires, and we'll touch this to the objects of interest to find out if we have a closed loop or an open loop. Once again, a closed loop is when the test bulbs are lit, and open loop would be when the test bulbs are unlit. Now, before we even make predictions on this, it's important to realize that you need to label parts of the socket with which clip and which plate is which. So taking a look at the image on the screen, notice that the plates, which is where the bulb gets screwed in, the plate A is above the surface, is where the threads of the bulb would be, where plate B is below and where the tip of the bulb would rest once the light bulb was screwed into this area. So the plate that is above, we're going to call plate A, and it's connected to clip A, while clip B is connected to the bottom plate, or plate B, down here. So in a real circuit, what would that look like, or in a real socket? Taking a look, here is a socket. Try to get the glare off there. And notice that you've got an A plate, which is above the surface, and a B plate, which is down here below the surface. So plate A is connected to clip A, and plate B, which is on the bottom, B on the bottom, is connected to clip B. Please make sure that you have made all of your predictions before moving through this video. So, testing this third socket, we'll be recording if we have a closed loop if the bulbs are lit, or an open loop if the bulbs are unlit. Our first one asks us to touch clip A and clip B. The bulbs are unlit, so that's an open loop. Number 2 says we need to touch clip A and plate A. Now notice when we touch clip A and plate A is connected to plate A with a metal rivet. So we have metal, touching metal, and we have a closed loop. The bulbs are lit. Number 3 is plate A and plate B. I'm actually going to touch plate B first because it's easier to get it under there, and then plate A on the top. In this case, the test bulbs did not light. And if we take a closer look at the socket, notice that in between the plate on the top and the plate on the bottom, there's just air in between those two, and we had previously determined that air was an insulator. Moving on, we've got plate A and the base. So plate A and the red or blue or wooden base, and finally clip A and the base. Notice in these last couple cases the bulbs did not light, so we had an open loop and the bulbs were unlit. Moving on to the bulb. First thing, they want us to touch both loose ends of the wires to the tip. So notice that the test bulbs are lit. Both bulbs that were in the previous sockets are lit up, so that's a closed loop for sure. But while we're not going to write this down right now, is this third bulb that I'm touching, is it lit? And the answer is no. This third bulb I'm touching is unlit. However, you're only recording if the test bulb's lit, so that was a closed loop. Next up, we touch the threads of the bulb. So both testing wires are on the threads, the test bulbs are lit, we have a closed loop, but again, notice this third bulb is unlit. Both test wires go to the glass, the bulbs are unlit, therefore it's an open loop. And then finally the black ring, which is pretty challenging to just touch the black rings. And touching both black rings, the test bulbs are unlit. That black ring again is made of ceramic material and it's an insulator. Now I've added an 11th thing down here to touch the thread and tips of this third bulb. So I'm touching the threads and I go in and touch the tip. And yes, now we have a closed loop because both test bulbs are lit. But what's special about this loop is that not only are the test bulbs lit, but the third bulb I'm touching is lit as well. Because the third bulb is lit, this bulb here is lit, that means charge must be flowing through the filament of that bulb. What two external parts of this bulb did we have to touch so that charge was flowing through the filament? And we're touching the threads and the tip of the third bulb. If we were to take this a step further, what if I set up the very first example we looked at when we hooked up an empty socket and hooked the wires to clip A and clip B? Notice, as before, the test bulbs didn't light. However, what if we added a third bulb to this third socket at this time? What do you think will happen? There you go. And all three bulbs lit. So somehow, some way, when we screw that third bulb in here, somehow charge is going through the filament of that bulb. For that to happen, charge must be going into the threads, up the support wires, through the filament, down the other support, and out the tip into the plate B of the socket, and parting the loop, or the opposite way through.